Good afternoon. I will, we will briefly begin the next panel, which will be once more by a Brazilian, but this time, for those who don't understand Portuguese can be happy to know that the panel will be in English, but those who speak Portuguese can also be happy because questions can also be made again in Portuguese because our next speaker speak both Portuguese and English, so it's a bilingual, and which is a good and inclusive for everyone. Before we start, we're discussing AI technology, and is also very important for us to know the impact of the climate change and man-made climate change and impacts on society, especially in the global south. Recently in Brazil, last month, we saw several floodings, we caused several deaths. So once more, as we did yesterday, I would like all of you one moment of silence and respect for all those who lost their lives, their houses, and families and property during the floods in Rio Grande do Sul. So one moment of silence, please. Okay, thank you all. I will now, on a happy tone, I would like to invite Fabio Steibel from ITSU, who will introduce the next speaker. Come up.
So to introduce Polinho, I can introduce myself. I self-adopted myself in Rio de Janeiro 20 years ago. And I say self-adopted because if there's any carioca here, he will reject me being a carioca. I don't have the accent, I don't have the approach, I put seatbelts in the back seat, I'm just not a carioca accepted by them. But there's a reason why this matters, because someone taught me what Rio de Janeiro was. And one thing they taught me, I now teach for any foreigner that come to visit Rio and goes to my house. So I open Google Maps and say, this is Rio. And then you can see Copacabana, you can see Ipanema, you can see Urca, you can see City Center. And then I zoom out and I say, and this is the Janeiro, because Rio de Janeiro is huge. And there's a reason why they are different, but there is also a benefit. They are different and complementary. And what I like the most about Polinho is that he speaks from a territory that is both Rio and de Janeiro. And this Rio de Janeiro altogether represents not only the Global South, but Brazil as well. So Data Lab is just a place that does knowledge, research, and data from a territory perspective. So to introduce our next key speaker, I will just read his bio very shortly. He was born and raised in Manaus, the Amazon forest main state. He actually lives here in Rio de Janeiro, where he is the data coordinator and DPO of Data Lab. He is a data laboratory with focus on gender, race, and territory. He has a master and is actually doing a PhD in epidemiology, so spread diseases research, as I memorized, and populational science data at UFRJ, which would be the Federal University of Rio de Janeiro. Polinho believes and works for a democratization of technologies done by all people in a free way and a sovereign way. So Polinho, please join us. Thank you very much.
Hello, everybody. Hello, everybody. Come on, help me out here. First of all, I want to thank to the invitation. It's always a great pleasure to be talking with such qualified audience. And today I have a very important and difficult mission, which is to talk to you guys about something that we are doing here in Rio de Janeiro, in Data Lab. As you already know, I'm the data coordinator there. If I press here, does it work? Okay. So what I'm going to talk about mainly is what we call citizen-generated data. This is a methodology that we didn't came up It's a methodology that has already been there in the world, and we just believe that this is one of the greatest technology or methodology to shift our focus from ethics in data to justice in data. So I'm going to talk to you a little bit about this perspective and how we in Data Lab, and also we're not alone doing that, we are going against, or some kind of against, the perspective of a responsible AI. And I know this might frighten some of us here, like, what are you doing here if you're against it? But I guess I can do that and you understand. What Fabio was just saying is about what this picture shows. Right here, under this map, is where we are, at Autumn, in Copacabana Palace. And where Data Lab was born is at the Favela da Maré, which is up there in the north region. And if we take an Uber now to go from here to there, we are going to spend almost 1 hour to reach there, without traffic. And there is something very important, because right here where we are, it's the richest region in Rio de Janeiro. As you go far away on this map, you are going to find a very different city, but very smart people with great technology and also doing and producing research and data. For you to understand a little bit better about now what Data Lab does and not where we were born, I brought a video that I hope goes fine.
A maioria das pesquisas tenta descobrir o que todo mundo faz, o que todo mundo pensa, o que todo mundo sabe. Mas você não é todo mundo. Se você é negro, LGBTQIA+, ou moradora do Complexo da Maré, por exemplo, sua realidade não reflete o que as grandes pesquisas apontam. Para provar isso, é só olhar pela janela. Mas os outros só sabem disso porque tem quem pesquise você. O Data Lab é uma organização focada na geração cidadã de dados sobre mulheres, pessoas negras, LGBTQIA+, moradores de favela, enfim, quem importa. Juntando esses dados, a gente consegue responder perguntas que pesquisa nenhuma fez, mas que com certeza você já deve ter se perguntado. Tipo, por que até hoje não tem saneamento básico onde eu moro? Ou será que a água da torneira do rico é igual à minha? Entendendo melhor quem você é e em que ponto você está, fica mais fácil saber quais são as mudanças mais importantes para a sua comunidade e como lutar por elas. Data Lab. Dados sobre quem importa. Você.
When we made this video, we made it because we were always wondering, when we go to these search events that talks about technology or AI, we have the feeling that we are taking as normal all the risks that comes from technology or artificial intelligence. And also when I read the description of the event, I saw a lot of automatization and working with algorithms, and also how we're going to mitigate all these risks. But we, as a computer scientists or people that works with that, sometimes we don't wonder or we don't ask ourselves, who are those people that make our prediction value drops by 10 or 12%? Or who are the people that make my algorithm of my prediction, maybe, to drops down just 10 or 15%? And maybe it's because I'm from Manaus in the north region in the country, or maybe because I work with data in favela. Every time that someone comes with this conversation, which is almost, no, don't worry, we are going to start the process, we are going to run the system, and we are going to check the algorithm as we go by, and then when we solve the most part of the problem, we are going to start to focus on the north region or the people from the favela. And this worries me a lot because in my daily basis, what I see is, for example, people like black and brown women, solo mothers, and women from the favelas have their benefit during the pandemic being denied because sometimes one wrong digit in their personal data. And it is not an isolated case. It's not because I saw my neighbor doing that or being under this violation. This was the majority in Brazil. Black and brown women were the most affected by misleading data at the same time that they were the most in need of the benefit from the government during the pandemic. Also, in my daily basis, what I see is young men being arrested by mistake in a stadium after facial recognition failure. So when I talk about technology and mistakes and mitigating risks, I cannot forget, or I cannot feel in peace with myself by knowing that my people and people exactly like me, and they are not one or two or five. When we are talking about Brazil or any other country, these 5, 10% or 15% where our algorithms doesn't work that well are people that have been their right of living denied in a daily basis. So we always need to ask ourselves, who are those people? Who are those people? Because they are the most important for me, because they are where I come from. And also, they are not a small part of the population. They are the majority of the population in Brazil and the most countries in the South Globe. So what I'm going to talk to you here and today is to focus in those kind of people that most times are being neglected of our discussions, and that we are taking their risks for granted in order to push the advance of technology. And when I'm saying this, I don't want to send a message that I'm an anti-technology or that I'm an anti-automatization or algorithms. I decided to be a computer scientist just because of that. I love technology and I love automatization process and everything. But I cannot just live my life and study or build system if I don't care much more about those people, because they are, for me, who matter the most. So this point of view, it takes a shift of perspective. Most of the times we are talking about ethics on data. But as all of us know, ethics depends on who you are, where you are, your faith, where you were born, something like that. Maybe something that is ethical for me is unethical for you. But when I'm talking about justice in data, and this is not my quote, it's from Khadija Abdurrahman, she says and she asks that we always need to wonder who has the power to classify and determine the repercussions and policies associated with historical injustice. We don't have this power most of the time. People from the favela, black and brown people, or poor people, we don't have those power. And most of the time, people that press the enter, or the shift enter, or the control enter, they are the ones that have the power to determine all the repercussions of it. And what we are seeing right now, it's like, if we have those risks, it's okay to carry on this process. So we need to shift our mind from ethics in data to justice in data, and mostly because we have a historical injustice. In the end of my presentation, I'm going to talk a little bit more about this historical injustice. And we have multiple ways to ensure justice in data. Multiple. For example, in this year, the federal government, they did a participatory kind of way where each citizen could put a proposal of what the funding or the budget of the government should focus in themes, in areas. The citizens could participate online by the internet, but also the government made local conferences in the capitals of the cities, so everybody could participate and have a word to say, okay, I need the money from the government to put here and not there. This is one example of participatory and also something that touches data justice. And another way, or another possibility to ensure that, is what we are calling citizen-generated data. We are defining it by a compound or a set of actions that allow citizens to generate, collect, and use the data for the benefits of their own community and collectives. So now let's imagine. I showed to you two examples of injustice data. One was from the benefit during the pandemic, and another stands for the facial recognition. So now let's imagine if those people that are the most affected, they were the one building the systems and building the softwares. Can you think or can you imagine that those people would allow an algorithm to make wrong decisions by an average 15% in black women? I don't think so. So when we shift this point of view and when we put the most affected people in the center of the table and they have the power to decide to do everything, the whole process of the data science is going to be different. And this image, it's from the first seminar that we did in the Citizen Data Generate that happened in the last October, in the last year. And we had about 30 organizations participating, and that were organizations that already recognized themselves as doing the CGD methodology. But after that, we started to develop more our work, and we started the Citizen-Generated Data Network that right now are being operated by the 6 civil organizations that are here from Rio de Janeiro, but we are expanding our job and our work to try to do in a national way. So I brought this image and the logo from the organizations just to show to you that the CGD is not something that's data lab to claim the authorship or something. It's a collective work because it only works if we do it in a collective way. So we have a manifest that you can find in our website. Any civil organization or research group can join in. It's not a closed group. But what really is, who of you have seen this object, this round object? Have anyone seen? Oh, we have, okay, almost 10 people. Here we call cabaça. So it's called cabaça. And cabaça is a very special thing. It grows in trees. And inside we have some seeds and fruits. And it's very special for us. Because for indigenous people, we built the maracá with the cabaça. And the maracá is the instrument that calls all the entities. Also, from the people that are coming from Africa, the cabaça always stands for a representation of something that doesn't have a beginning and neither an end, and neither something that finishes. And we don't have also a hierarchy. Is that correct? So we don't have, for example, something that's more important than other. So I think the cabaça is the best way to show to you the steps for the CGD. Because sometimes we start at identifying, but sometimes we're going to start by communicating. And the cabaça always stands up for the connection between the flesh and the spirit. Or like, for example, the material from the holiness. It's something that makes these connections. And I brought that because to do CGD, you cannot only think by your reason or by your emotion. There's never going to be a moment or a time that you have to think only by your reason and only by your algorithm. You have to connect both of things. Otherwise, you're going to repeat the historical injustice process. So these are the 7 steps. I'm going to talk very shortly about them. The first one, which is identify, we always start by asking, for example, which problem or subject, experience, or reality needs to be highlighted through data. And this question is very important because, in my point of view, it's not everything that needs to be addressed by data. Sometimes we have some subject that needs to be kept or needs to be kept in secret. For example, some holy songs from where I go, we don't want to put them online. I don't want this data to be available. So every time that we start to think which problem we are gonna address, is that worth it to address it by data? And after that, when you pick this problem that can be addressed by data, then you go to which are the better causes that could explain the selected problem by you and your group. This question, I always bring the example for amygdalitis, like when you have a sore throat. You can pick, for example, fever as one of very related cause of amygdalitis or sore throat. But fever is just one sign of any other inflammations. So it's not very strong related. But if you do, for example, a visual inspection, then you can identify, for example, some soreness or some white dots. So a visual inspection would be a better cause than fever in the case of amygdalitis. So we needed to choose which causes we are going to collect the data to address these problems, because we don't have money, time, and enough people to select all the data. Or when we have all the resources that we have to, if we choose to go with this process, we are going to end up collecting massive data from the population, and this is not what we stand for. The next two steps is to discuss and select. When you choose some causes, you need to ask, what are the other topics of the problem which you won't approach and how it impacts your work? So if I go back again to the case of amygdalitis and you choose not to address fever, you're not going to be able to measure, for example, the intensity of the amygdalitis. And then you need to discuss this with your group. Like, okay, this data and this data, we're not going to collect any data. And after that, we are not going to have this data to analyze, so how it impacts our work. Then, are there other databases that already have the same subject as the one you chose? Because most of the times, the problem that we are addressing have already published in open data, and then you don't have to do a CGD. But then, if you don't, go for it. And these two steps are the ones that cost most money and most time also. You need to ask yourself, who will help you and participate from the data collection and generation process? And all the time, in the CGD methodology, the people that we choose are the most affected by the problem. So if you want to address the problems about facial recognition in Black people, those people have to be the ones that are going to collect the data and analyze the data and discuss all of it. So those are the ones that are going to be they're going to do the better project. And what are the needed process to generate the data for a machine to read? And it is important because in the favelas in Brazil, people are building huge databases, sometimes in a notebook. It's very common here in Rio de Janeiro. We take something from the grocery just by a trustworthy relation. And the person that owns this place goes, right, okay, you took 1 kilo of sugar, and the other day you took like 2 beers. And these are huge databases, because if we have access to this notebook, we are going, for example, to analyze the habits of consumption from the whole favela. So in favela, we are doing huge databases, but we always have to ask ourselves how we are going to collect this data in a practical manner that works for the people that live there, but also how we change it into readable for a machine to do. And the last one that I'm going to talk about is communicate, which is very important, and most of the times we are always discussing about it, which is which strategies you and your group will create to communicate the results of your work. So let's imagine, if Black people are building the softwares and the algorithms to facial recognition, which is something that I don't believe they're going to do, and they are doing all the process and analyzing everything, they're going to be the best people to communicate what's going well and what's going wrong, and how and why it's going like that. So all the CGD process in the Cabaça goes around the most affected people. Not because it's something that is ethical or because it's beautiful, but because it's the best way to produce knowledge. Nobody can talk better about their reality than themselves. That's impossible. So all these 7 steps goes around to their own people have this role play. And I brought 2 practical examples that we've built already and have results for you to understand in a better way. The first one, which is the famous one, some of you already know it, called CocoZap. CocoZap can be translated in a very poor way as Pupu Zap. And it has its name because it's a project that talks about basic sanitation violations in the favela da Maré. And basic sanitation in our favelas, it almost all the time a poop situation. The engineer of the project is quite simple. It starts right up there. So like the user, which is a regular citizen that lives in the favela da Maré, sees a violation. The violation can be, from 3 subjects. Open sewage could be also a trash accumulation or the lack of water. So the regular citizen sees this violation. He, she, or them sends for us a photo through WhatsApp. And I needed to explain for you why we chose WhatsApp. Because why don't you choose an open and free software or build another app to do that? Unfortunately, here in Brazil, WhatsApp is the most downloaded app ever. And because we have the illegal practice of 0 rating, everybody communicates through WhatsApp. So if we think about develop another app, so the regular citizen needs to give their data to download this app and also have to pay for the connection to send the photo, it would be a mess. So like, okay, what works in practice is going to be through WhatsApp. So the regular citizen sends this violation through WhatsApp, and together with a person from our team, they build a complaint. This complaint needs to have a photo of the violation, a description that can be sent by audio if the person cannot write, and also the location. And we decide to do this in a person way because we feel that, let's imagine a regular citizen living his life, and he cares so much about his territory that he stops what he's doing and sends a photo and starts a conversation. And imagine that what he gets, it's an automatic response or response by a robot. It's over already. So he needs to have an open and free conversation that can only be made by another human person. And after that, this person that belongs to our team build with all this information one row in a Google sheet. This person builds it and separates all the personal data in a local database. So the personal data, for example, the name and the cell phone number doesn't go to the online sheet. Goes to a local database. We put it in an encrypted container that we do with VeraCrypt. And after that, we post it in the maps and also in online dashboards with all these informations. What we discovered so far, this is the reality of basic sanitation in the favela da Maré. This is an open river that collects all the sewage from the house. Like, it's literally like that. Everything that goes through the bathroom, through the toilet, goes direct to the river, that goes direct to the Guanabara Bay. So this is the reality of basic sanitation in the favela da Maré. And we compared this situation of what we collected from CocoZap with the official and government data. So what you are seeing now in the maps, in the green dots, it stands for each violation of open sewage sent by a regular citizen. So each one is one complaint. Behind it, in the green layer, is the official data from the Brazilian Institute for Geography and Statistics, the IBGE. As you can see, we have complaints from open sewage in the whole territory. But the official data, it's not the same. We have, for example, right in the middle of the map, a huge area where we don't have any information. No information at all. When we discussed this with the IBGE, they showed to us 2 possibilities. The first one, maybe the agent from IBGE, when he, she, or them was in the territory, they could not collect the data. Maybe because it was raining, maybe because of the violent situation in the favela da Maré. Many possibilities, it can happen. But also, the strongest possibility is that this territory, this area, is what the UN call informal settlement. And for the UN, in the informal settlement, you don't collect information about sewage. So somehow, some people seated on a table and decided internationally, in a worldwide, that where you have informal settlement, you don't need or you don't collect information about sewage. So when we compare the data that we collected by the CGD and put against it the official information, we have a completely different knowledge. And let's imagine that the government decides to do, for example, an infrastructure repair in the whole favela da Maré. Which data the government is going to use? For sure, it's going to be used the data from the official institute. So when the president or the minister looks at the reality, what he's going to see, he or she's going to see is like, okay, there is no much problem in the favela da Maré. But the reality is the opposite. The same map, when we changed to a heat map, we can see a very huge red stream right in the middle, which is where we have the most number of open sewage violations. This is not by coincidence. At this area, it's specifically the division of the territory. In the favela da Maré, we have 2 armored groups, paramilitary groups. And this red area is exactly the division area. So to the left, we have one group, and to the right, we have another group. So what happens when the agent of IBGE goes to favela territory and sees the division between 2 armored groups? It's reasonable to think that this person will not feel safe to collect any data of any kind. But what if the people that lives there, that know everybody, that have local relation, if we teach them how to collect the data and how to do it in a proper way, if they themselves collect the data, then we have a different reality. So when we saw it, we already knew that this could happen. We developed a sample, a probabilistic sample, and we went for each household asking what was the situation in each household. And right now, the data from Cocosap is part of the municipality plan. And because of our work also by collecting data in the favelas, now we are part of the consultative board for IBGE. So now we can exchange methodologies and try to learn with each other how it's the better way to collect data in favelas. But sometimes we don't have open and administrative data. This next example that I'm going to show to you now, it was a campaign that in Portuguese is called Por que eu? In English, could be translated, why me? We were trying to understand the people experience under police brisks, which is when a police officer stops you and can run a personal search on you to check if you have drugs or guns or any illegal objects. What happens in our reality? We know that the police here in Brazil, specifically in Rio de Janeiro, have a very racist filter. The police officer is going to always stop most of the time if you are black and a man. So it doesn't matter if you look suspicious or if the policeman sees something, it will stop you. So we knew already that the police has this racist filter. But we don't have any data about police risks in Brazil, none at all. So we ran a campaign together with another organization called IDDD, which is an institute that they fight for the right for defense. And we had the help for many artists, activists, people from civil society, and we developed a form where we distributed during the pandemic, so it was fully online, and we got responses from the whole country. So we have enough data to compare the experience of black and brown people versus white people. And in a descriptive analysis, we found out that 8 out of 10 people stopped by the police are black and brown. When we ran a logistic regression to estimate the odd ratio to be stopped by the police, what we discovered, it is like black and brown people have 4.5 more chance to be stopped by the police when compared with white people. Even if we control by age, scholarity, profit, location, and another variable that I don't remember right now. So what we did with this other CGD project was to put in numbers what we already know. And sometimes we have the public and open data to compare and to show that our reality is completely different. But sometimes we don't. And when we don't, we can also build brand new databases that works with CGD. But this is not what happened with black and brown people in Brazil when stopped by the police. What we discovered also, that people go under a several human rights violation. The first image says in Portuguese, like, black and brown people have 3 times more chance to be approached in their houses, which is illegal in Brazil. So a police officer goes into your house and knock on your door to approach you, it needs a document, an official document to do that. But this doesn't happen in the favelas. So this is something that we discovered also. And another data that's really hard to read is like 42% of the black and brown people that goes under the police risks have their genitals searched by something illegal. So these projects and this process to build brand new or sometimes complementary databases can show to us a better result or a better perspective of what happens in reality. So when I talk about justice process and justice data, it's exactly what I'm talking about. This is a table that's not developed by me. It was developed by 2 women authors that they published a book by the MIT published their book, which is called Data Feminism. And they put on the table one perspective. When we talk about FAccT, that is the column on your left, all these elements, they work. Yeah, it works. We are working with them right now. We have been working with them for several years, and what we are talking also is to keep working with them for the years to come. But these 5 elements that we are working right now, they are elements to maintain the power. So we will keep having this 10% of people that drops down our predictive value being the same people, being black and brown, being from the favelas, and we will keep on this process. But what they stand for, and I agree with, is a shift of perspective. So you remember that I showed to you a quote that we always need to ask ourselves, who has the power to classify and to say, okay, let's run this algorithm and let's keep doing this process. Most of the time, people that do this, do that only thinking on the column on the left. But what we are proposing is it's really to shift and really to change this injustice process. So from ethic, think about justice. So, because ethic depends on the point of view and the perspective, but when we talk about justice, it's really different. So it would keep happen like a young man like me being arrested in a full-packed stadium during a soccer match, maybe not. When we change also bias for oppression, then we are directly referring of what is happening. So like a facial recognition system that goes wrong by 15% in black women is not a simple bias, it's an oppression. And if we decide to keep on like that, we need to say that we are running softwares and algorithms that oppress people. And also, when you go fairness to equality, this is completely different also, because if the same algorithm treats me in a fair way compared with a white rich person in the South region in Rio de Janeiro, it's not the same. But when we go to equality, we need to change a lot of things in this algorithm, maybe completely different algorithms for completely different social groups. Or maybe don't have an algorithm to do that. After that, transparency to reflectiveness. What is this idea of reflectiveness? If a situation happens, only if a situation happens with black people, the same situation needed to be reflected on the white people. This is reflectiveness, the same idea. And then I ask, would be the same algorithms or the same system? Probably not. And then to change this idea, and this is why I accepted the invitation to be here and to talk, and that's why I'm really happy to be here, is to change our minds from scrutinize algorithms to understand history, culture, and context. When we are developing new technologies and putting them to be used in a massive manner, it's not about scrutinizing the algorithm or maybe open sandboxes. And I'm not saying that this doesn't work, but I'm saying that we needed to understand all this process. So the person maybe who does the algorithm or who decides how to do it needs to think about the history, culture, and context. Because here in Brazil, black and brown people built all the richness in this country. Since the beginning, we were slaves, and we built it, all of it. And then we built the Brazilian elite. So the Brazilian elite occupied the government positions. And this same elite denied us the access to high-quality education and jobs that really pays us well. And right now, we keep being the same people that work 8 to 10 hours, spend 3 hours in public transportation, to be paid the amount only to eat and to live in regions that they say they don't belong to us. So nothing has changed. Maybe me being here is a little step towards the difference. But when we started to shift our mind by, okay, we don't have to only scrutinize the algorithm, but we need to understand the history, the culture, and the context, we can shift our minds from a perspective of only ethic to justice of data. And my contribution, or my work, or Data Lab work, is to say, we have one contribution. CGD can be one of these contributions, but I'm really sure that from these days, you knew also, you got in touch with other ways to build that. So by that, I finish to the questions. And I really thank you. Obrigado. These are my personal contacts and Data Lab contact also. Thank you. Yeah, people who want to ask something, just raise your hand.
Hi, thank you very much. That was really, really powerful. I'm glad I was here for that. My name is Sabrina. I'm a data journalist and also the co-founder of Feminist Internet, and we talk a lot about centralizing marginalized communities in order to redistribute power. I just have one question, which is, how do you incentivize the citizen data generators, and how do you keep that kind of consistency in that relationship with them, and what has been the feedback from them for the things that have worked or not worked?
Thank you. Sabrina, right? Thank you for your question. Do you remember when I was talking about the 7 steps in the Cabaça, and I said, okay, the engagement process is the one that costs most time and most money and most people. It's because this is really the hardest step to do. And it's hard, but also logical, because when we start to show people in the community, okay, let's talk about basic sanitation problem. And this really happened. So let me take one step back. When we started to talk about CocoZap in the Favela da Maré, we didn't get much responses. People were not sending violation. And we were like, what the hell, what's happening? Because this is a severe violation of civil rights, and people are not sending the violations, what's going on? Maybe we didn't distribute it well, the number, or we didn't explain very well what's going on. And what people said to us, open sewage in the front of my house is not a violation. It's how it has been since I was born, and since my mother was born, and since before that, and everything. And then we start to talk with people and sit with them and trying to understand why it's like that and what are the consequences and what are the causes. And people start to care about, because then they realize, so wait a second. So you are telling me if I send one violation through WhatsApp, you are going to add a lot of them, and then you're going to send to the municipality council, and then the infrastructural works can happen here and change everything. And then we say, yes, maybe we need to have faith. Let's do something. And people always, because they feel they are the most affected people by the problem. So we started like that, by talk to the most affected people about the problem and how data can assist them to address the problem. And these people are going to naturally and organically send a lot of data and build the databases. This was something that surprised us in the Why Me campaign, because we were not expecting that we would have responses for the whole Brazil, because we work here in Rio de Janeiro and IDDD works in São Paulo, and then we had the response for the whole states, because it was like a black and brown person talk to them through social media and saying, okay, I know what you feel under an experience. You can trust. We have safety and digital and cryptography and the whole thing, and I know what you are going under. So people, it's about connection, I think. That's what I'm trying to say. It's about connection. People feel connected because this problem is their life. They live this problem on a daily basis. And when some person that looks exactly like them, that talks like them, and dress like them says, okay, we have some possibility to address this problem with data, a connection happens. And Nego Bispo, I think, they say there is nothing more strong, or there is nothing more powerful than human connection. Nothing, like never, nothing in the world is better than human connection. So this is how we engage people, so they get in. As long as they are in the process, we go teach them how to do it. So how you are going to build the row in the database, and now how you are going to make the analysis, and how to build a graph, and how we change this graph into an infographic so it can be more interesting, more appealing to the audience. So people feel part of the thing, and they are the role player of it. So I guess it starts with human connection, and then goes for really put this person in the whole process, and not only as we were used to do, to use the person as a data collector, because that doesn't engage and doesn't connect. And maybe we are tired of being a data collector. So I think these two things. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, hello. Thank you so much for this presentation. It is so fitting for a conference like this, as well as just like in the general space of AI, and when we think about the societal impacts that AI has to people around the world. And when you think about societal impact, you have to think about the most historically marginalized communities around the world. And so I'm thinking about this also in the context of the US, and in the space that I'm in big tech. I would love to give your opinion, get your opinion on how everything that you were talking about, particularly around like this, the historical context, history, culture, how to get AI practitioners, data people to really care about this, and how to really like get this implemented into, you know, the outputs that we see today in AI.
Thank you. Once, the first person that I heard talking about this was Nina. Nina is around here. She was here, or she will be here. Nina da hora. And she was the first person that I saw talking about that. Like, data scientists need to study social science. And also social scientists need to study data science. And this is what this convention is somewhat about, right? Like interdisciplinary and multidisciplinary and some kind of that. And first we need to recognize that how we got educated was really wrong, because most of the time, when we tech people start to join the field, what we do is like we sink ourselves in very comfortable chairs, and we will start to learn specifically about statistics and data mining and artificial intelligence. And when we reach an output, for example, okay, my algorithm have a 92% of quality of precision, we go like, this is amazing. And when we say that to our manager or our director, they go like, perfect, let's go for it. That's perfect. But when we have different perspectives, social perspective maybe, I guess that's when, or that's how we stop and go like, well, what about this 8%? Like, who are them? Let's open also the algorithm metrics that when we have the metrics, because most of the time it's a black box in the end, we don't know how the algorithm classified. So I guess this is something. So we need really to recognize that how we got educated was very wrong. And we needed to make the effort to open our point of view or our perspective. And it takes time, and time equals money. So we need to put more money in changing experience, more money to sit with sociologists, anthropologists, and other kind of ologists to discuss each step of the algorithm. And again, it takes a lot of time. Because how I'm going to explain, for example, to my communication team in Data Lab, what means precision of an algorithm? I have to go several steps back to equation, ratio, proportion, and until I get to precision, for example. So we need to invest more money and time in this changing process. We need to recognize that. So for example, I believe here we have a lot of coordinators and managers and maybe people that are responsible for other people in their work. So we need to recognize that we need to take more time and discuss step by step for everybody to understand. I believe this is only the way that we're going to achieve that. And what we need to understand also, it is not to not explain for everybody what technology is about, and not to explain how technology is made is a political process and a political decision. So, for example, when we say, okay, 8% of black and brown women had their beneficial denied during the pandemic. When nobody understands about number and mathematics or anything, people are going to see this news and going to say, 8%, it's not that much. Or what is really about it? So we need to understand that when we close ourselves in crystal chambers and we keep doing this technology as a very sacred and holy thing, this is a political purpose to not share and spread the word. So I guess these three things, really changing experience and knowledge, starting by recognize that we got very poorly educated, invest more time and money to do this process in develop system, and third, to always recognize that this practice of not sharing data knowledge or data science is a political process to annihilate and keep the power in the hands of the same people. Guess that's it. My email. Okay, my personal information. I don't know if I can do this by myself. But no, it's not easy. Only in Portuguese it's easy. Polinho@datalab.org. We have another question? Okay.
Yes, thank you for the wonderful keynote. I had a question. I loved the slide where you were mapping things that are of value to this conference to different concepts. And so you mapped fairness to equality. And I was wondering why you chose equality and not equity. And like, yeah.
Yeah, that's not my choice. I also prefer equity. Even here, for example, we have our universal health system. Our universal health system also works with equity because we already understood that if a person needs more attention, I need to give more attention to this person, and this cannot be achieved by an equity measure. But I agree with you, equity is better. But as is the work of other two women authors, I decided to bring exactly their work. Because I really even recommend for everybody to read their book, because Data Feminism is a very great book and shifts all the brain connections. But that's just, the reason it's just to respect the author work. But I also prefer equity than equality. It's better.
Thank you, thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you so much for the talk. It was amazing. I work on sort of data cleaning and whose data gets thrown away, essentially. So I was actually thinking about how certain people's data might be very difficult to put into the same categories as other people's, or people who refuse to be datafied, because I know I come from a government that really abuses data. So I was wondering if you can talk a little bit about people who refuse to be datafied or cannot be datafied.
Yeah. This is a very complex conversation, and maybe we need another panel just to talk about. Because it goes very much about sovereignty, right? And is it there? I'm spelling it right, sovereignty? Yeah. Okay. And sovereignty, it's almost like ethics also. It depends on where I come from. So, for example, sometimes in a Brazilian perspective of sovereignty, the data protection, but how our law was made is to ensure sovereignty. But for me, it doesn't ensure the sovereignty of where I come from, you know? So do we have the same kind of discussion about ethics and sovereignty? What we're trying to do is always to respect the autonomy of the individuals, but we spend a lot of time talking and drinking coffee and drinking beers and talking about data and saying why we need to collect exactly those personal data and how also this data will be stored and analyzed and how it will impact. And most of the time people goes like, okay, if you are saying like that, and I know you for my whole life because you live in the same area, you look like me, I trust you. Treat my data very carefully, and we do that. And I think this is the best way because I never saw another way that respects autonomy and sovereignty from a local perspective than that. So I guess talk to people, and most of the time use people from the local territory to do that, because then we have already a trust relationship that we built since we were like small kids running naked on the streets, you know? So when this person come to me and explain the project and why it needs to collect my personal data and also explains to me how it's gonna be stored, then I go like, okay, it's fine, you know? I trust you, so I trust your project. I guess that's the way. Okay, these are my personal contacts. And if you look for Polinho in any social media, maybe you can find me. I don't know if there's a lot of Polinhos out there. That's it. We have 50 seconds. Any other question?
I guess I have one, but I don't think we have the time. But it was just about, I mean, I'm from ITS Rio, so I was really wondering how was it the process for you guys to build a relationship with the government and IBGE, in the municipality and all of that, because for so long those people were like invisible to them. So how it was for you guys to approach the government and show them that this is actually the data, that this is actually happening, and also this idea of confrontation, because for so long you were not seeing these people, and we are here trying to make you see them. So my question was more about how to build this kind of relationship with the government to actually make a difference for people that actually matter. Thank you.
Okay, how long do I have to answer that? 1 minute? Okay, 1 minute. It was really hard. It cost me a lot of tears, really, because to prove a different perspective or a different point of view with the government almost all the time is a humiliating process. We go to conference, we go to meetings, and we go prepared more than maybe today. I review each word that I was going to say and each presentation that I was going to show. And it is a humiliating process, actually. So it costs a lot of tears. But thank God I'm from Candomblé. If I say Candomblé, everybody understands in English. It's an African religion. And right there, I find comfort and also protection. And I always say, every time that I go to Brasilia, which is the capital of Brazil, and I go to talk with ministers, I come back with no axé, like with no energy at all. I come back like, do you remember the Dementors of the Harry Potter? That's how I feel in the government meetings. I come back like drained of all my energy, because it is a humiliating process. And it is a humiliating process because they wanted to be like that. They really wanted to be like that. So we have two options. And you, as a black woman, know our mothers and fathers, they also had these two options. We can cry and give up, or we can cry and keep trying. And we don't have another option than crying and keep trying. So it was really hard. It took us many years. CocoZap exists since 2018. And only in the last year, we made part of the consultative board. And only 2 years behind, our data got in the municipality plan. The Why Me campaign took 2 years for us to reach the Supreme Court with this data and to stand for all the things. So it takes a lot of time and a lot of tears, and it is a humiliating process, but we don't have another option, maybe. And that's why it's really important for us to connect in these kind of places, because after we go to our bars and we dress as we want, and we share everything that we suffer during that day, and we understand each other, and we keep doing. So I think this is important, to build personal network with people that look like us and understand our sorrows. And maybe that's the secret, to keep doing until one day it will work out, because it always has been like that. We are still here. It will be okay. Thank you.